Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for inviting me.
This is one special young lady. I hope you have a chance to get to know her and to just meet her as a person. She's a gift that God has given to His church. Stella, tell us just a little bit about you. Where are you from? What is, you work as part of the Link ministry. What's that? Just kind of talk for a minute about that.
Sure. I'm actually born in Hong Kong. For those of you who are aware of what's going on in the news, please pray for Hong Kong right now. It's a mess. Came to America with my family when I was 9 years old and grew up in San Francisco. I'm here with my husband, Ron, here, and moved to Southern California 6 years ago when God called me to enter into seminary. So I went to Azusa Pacific Seminary and got a master's in church leadership and development, which is what I love. Where God then opened the door after I graduated to connect me with Link Los Angeles. Link Ministry is all about leadership development. And so what I get to do the last 3 years is to work with local leaders to engage in the God has given them. To engage and equip and empower them to transform the communities with the gospel. These are the local leaders who are often overlooked and underestimated. In the margin, people aren't paying attention. And I get to just walk alongside with them. And our motto and our hashtag line is "No leader walks alone."
Great, thank you for that, and thank you. It's so important within our world today that we have people that are getting some of that advanced training, and I think that's important. And we're grateful that you have that and what you bring in understanding things of faith. Talk to us a little bit about what we ought to know as people in this context about Asian Americans. What are some of the general things, first of all, before we start drilling down, that we need to know, and that'll help us be prepared to witness for the gospel?
Right. I was trying to look around. Well, it's hard to look around who's in the room when I'm sitting in the front, but just earlier, one of the CMC students came in, and my husband and I were talking. We're like, well, there's a first generation here. I'm 1.5, coming from Hong Kong when I was 9 years old. My husband is second generation. And I'm not too sure if there are any third or fourth generation in the room. But in addition to that generations, we also have so many different subcultures in Asians. I'm Chinese. There is Vietnamese, there's Korean, there's Cambodian. There's so many different subcultures even within the Asian culture. And so as I respond to some of these questions, just keep that in mind, that I am mostly responding out of my own ethnicity of being Chinese American. But recognize that there are other Asians in your context that you'll be engaging in.
That's good. Thank you for that. As you think about what are some a little more specific ways, if I got a Chinese neighbor, how do I engage them? How do I make those connections? Because you can't necessarily in today's world go up and just pound on the door and say, "Hi, I'm here to talk about Jesus," and they're slam the door on your face. How do I, as we pray in Colossians, how does that door get opened?
Right. Every generation looks different. So I'll respond a little bit on first generation. First generation are the immigrants. If you were to reach them and they're your neighbors, I would say, I want to give a quick little statistic. So just in U.S. Asians, they're nearly half, 45% are U.S. Asians. Of that, 31% lives in California. So they're mostly in Northern California, San Francisco, which is where I came from, and here in Los Angeles, right? So you're going to have neighbors who are Asians and Asian Americans. And for the reason why I'm giving you that statistic is that many times in your communities, you're going to find festivities like Chinese New Year's, Dragon Boat festivals, mooncake festivals, where they're in the community. The best way is actually go in the community and engage in conversation with them and meet them there.
Talk a little bit about what Link has done to expose people to some of these Chinese cultural realities that would build the relationships of understanding that could lead to a gospel sharing.
What Link has done in terms of connecting to the Asian community to better understand how to cross-culture.
And where you've brought churches and groups to experience things. I know you did a long road trip up to San Francisco and had a chance to engage people in Chinese cultural realities to understand better so we know how best to witness.
Right. So earlier this year, Chinese New Year was in February, and what we did is I have a really close relationship with my home church in San Francisco. It's a Lutheran Church of Holy Spirit, predominantly Asian, fourth generation, and they were very kind enough to host a group that Link wanted to bring in different leaders who wanted to learn more about the Asian culture. And so we went to the church during Chinese New Year, where they led us into different activities of learning why do we celebrate Chinese New Year's, and how did they become a Christian? How did their parents become a Christian? How did their grandparents become a Christian? Just to sit in that space, to hear their stories and to ask questions and to just be interested. And so just creating opportunity, creating a space, inviting others to come, and just be in that space to learn.
Now, it's my understanding you have a photo. Can we show a photo?
I also realize we're going totally off script here. So yes, there is a picture of our mission executive director doing Tai Chi at my home church in San Francisco. That's also my husband up there. So part of it is not just asking questions and learning and kind of like you're saying, don't be afraid and engage. This is a way of engaging. Do the Tai Chi exercise with them. Tai Chi is a form of exercise for you who are not familiar with it. And I've been in Temple City for 2 years. In my first 3 years with Link, Temple City every Saturday morning has a Tai Chi class in their park, in the community. So if you have that in your community, go and participate in Tai Chi. It's good for your health, and meet some friends and have some conversation.
I have a Tai Chi DVD at home.
Or you can do that
because it's too embarrassing for me to go out in public yet, and for my Tai Chi. Although Dominic's given it a shot. If you haven't met Dominic Rivkin, he's our new director and mission exec for the district. That's him up there. He's got the right shirt on.
Yeah, he's wearing Pastor Lau's Chinese New Year Chinese outfit there.
That's great. Well, it's the stuff of relationships that matters so much. Talk about relationship culture in the Chinese community. How important is that? Talk about family. Talk about that kind of a circle of relationships. And how do I step into that to even understand the dynamics that are going on between first generation, second generation? How would my understanding of your family's life help me to better witness?
Asian has a very highly collective culture, which means that faith then becomes not an individual decision, but a family decision. It's also closely tied to the whole honor and base culture. And so if grandma and grandpa are Buddhist and you have a second generation who is interested in faith, it is very difficult sometimes to be open about faith because that could potentially bring shame. In a collective culture, this is a face of my family and my extended family and all those who are related to me. So if I were to bring shame, the whole entire family brings shame. If I were to bring honor, the whole entire family brings culture. So how does witnessing to a collective culture as well as honor and shame-based culture work is that recognize that when you, at least what I've noticed is when you are able to reach, say, a dad or a grandpa, it tends to be a little easier to reach the children and the grandchildren. But if you were to reach the younger generation, it's a little harder dynamic. Not to say it's impossible, it's just a little harder. So I'll give you one example. Brandon Lee, who you also know, who's an alumni at the school, he graduated from the Director of Parish Music program last year, and he is now a called worship leader up north in the Lutheran Church. Well, he came to our home church in San Francisco when he was 10 years old, if not younger. Became a Christian. He and his sister became a Christian. It wasn't until a few years ago, while he was on campus doing his college years, that his parents got baptized. That's 10 to 15 years. Okay? But it's not impossible, right? In a collective culture, if you can reach one member of the family, there's a higher chance to reach the rest of the family. So keep that in mind.
It's so different for us because we're in our primary American culture and worldview. We're very individualistic. And, we go back to the Billy Graham times as he began in the 40s and 50s and about your personal acceptance of Jesus Christ, as if it wasn't connected into community, or even as we come to Christ, we become part of a community immediately called the body of Christ. I think it's a piece that we fall down on regularly. I know that when I have shared Christ with Chinese friends and friends in China, even, they often will say to me, I can't be baptized until my parents die. And then, as a Christian, how do I then honor my parents and our family traditions and not feel like I'm engaged in any idolatry? What is that tension like for a Chinese American Christian with that expectation of honor in your culture?
Yes, it really is a huge tension, a lot of difficulties. So, again, speaking from youth that we minister to, many of them become a Christian, their parents are not. So around a festival where you go to the graveyard and the parents bring the family and say, hey, we need to honor our ancestors, there is a tradition to bow 3 times in the Chinese tradition. And yet, as youth, even for me growing up in the church, I was taught, no, you don't bow to the dead because they are not there alive to receive your respect. So you only stand there and you pray for those who are alive. Well, when we go to a graveyard and our parents are bowing and they look at you as the child, you're literally stuck. Do I bow 3 times as a respect and honor to my family because this is their tradition and their belief? Or do I not bow because that's what I was taught in church to not do, because then you're, in a way, bowing to Satan because the dead can't receive your respect. And so it's a huge predicament. And there is not an easy answer other than, what does it look like for you to walk alongside someone who is in that tension with the space of grace and understanding and helping them navigate that? Perhaps you're not bowing to respect the dead, but a respect to the family, those who are alive. And it looks different for different people, but it is a constant struggle and it's a very real tension for these families.
I'm going to give an example of one of the things that I've done over the years around the grave sweeping kind of experience. And then think if there are other moments in the Chinese culture of new beginnings and all the rest that could be useful for folks when they think about their witnessing opportunities. I like to call those cross connections. Where does my experience and theirs cross, and where can the cross be applied? Because when you talk about grave sweeping, it's a perfect Easter message, isn't it? To talk about how God swept the grave and what he did in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I think that's one piece that I've used many times over the years when I've had engagements. What are some other ways?
A big one is doing Chinese New Year. How many people are familiar with Chinese New Year? Just a quick show of hands. Oh, good. Perfect. And I don't know if you're familiar with the details of Chinese New Year, but one of the things during Chinese New Year, one of the things that I'll just talk loud. One of the things during Chinese New Year is that families likes to, on their door frame, have these red sayings, or not red sayings, sayings in black calligraphy ink on red paper, kind of like scrolls, around the doors. And these are blessings. These are sayings of blessings, because Chinese New Year is all about bringing in good luck. It's all about blessings and well wishes. And so they always put these around the door because to them it's the very idea of you're entering into a home and you're being blessed with these wishes and these things. Well, think about in the Bible, what story can you use to connect the red around the doorframe? Passover. Exactly. Where is that idea even came from, right? That's a connecting point that I can see that you can use for conversation around Chinese New Year.
And I think that's an important reminder to us. It's stuff we're not going to just fall into. It's stuff that we really ought to take some time to learn, to do some reading, to pick up, basic Chinese culture pieces, books, articles that we could read in light of asking, where's the gospel? Where could this be a connection for the gospel? So it's even someone like myself that certainly, I'm not Chinese, but I have learned more and more about Chinese culture because, first of all, 20 years of ministry in the San Jose area, it was our culture, that community of Milpitas, over 50% Chinese immigrants in that community. And so for us to be engaged in gospel connections, we had to learn. Are there some directions or places that you would encourage people to go to learn more about Chinese culture?
There are lots of places to learn. I created a resource list there. I didn't list too many. I just wanted to list the ones that I at least have read in terms of books, have heard in terms of podcasts, and have watched in terms of TV shows and Netflix. Just through that, if you are not as familiar, if you don't know anyone who you can ask question, that's a free resource that you can go to right away. And if you do know someone, go and actually not be afraid to ask questions. But one very good, not one, but an example of how. Are you guys able to hear me? I know I'm intermittent. Okay. Again, because the statistic is right there. If 45% of U.S. Asians are in the West Coast, and if 31% lives in the West Coast, that means you have Asians in your communities, which means you will have those festivals celebrated. Who in their city actually has seen banners that talk about Mooncake Festival or Dragon Boat Festival or Chinese New Year Festival, right? Go into the community because you're not going to find these people in the church. Go into these festivities and actually watch, meet friends, have conversation. That's the best place to go. And earlier you said about relationship. Relationship is key. I have a good friend who recently just returned from China after being a teacher there for 3 years. And she shared that in China right now, they're teaching young families to really only believe and trust in science. And that faith in Jesus is a myth. It's a myth. It's almost like Jesus is Santa Claus. So when they come to America, it is only in relationship with you, a real person who embraces faith, who is Christian, that makes faith real for them. That breaks the paradigm that Jesus is Santa Claus. So that can only happen in relationship with them.
Stella, I want to say thank you for sharing this with us. I hope this is not an exhaustive presentation, right? This whets your whistle, right? It gets you hungry to learn more. And whether it's Chinese or Vietnamese culture or Cambodian or whatever it is, as you look at your context, take the time, learn. If these folks that come from other parts of the world, from Asian contexts, are in your community, they're one of the fish in your pond. How are you going to reach them for Christ? And what are the opportunities that are in front of you?